In Proverbs 27:2, the Bible says, "Let another praise you and not your own mouth, a stranger and not your own lips." Hello, I'm tax lawyer Travis Watkins. They say that courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than fear. Were these good folks that you're about to hear from scared when they came to see me? Sure. But they had one other important thing in common. They made the conscious decision that something else was more important than fear. In other words, they didn't let fear paralyze them into inaction. Listen to what others have to say about my law office and what we may be able to do to help you. The people you're about to hear from and see on this DVD are not actors. They're real people, just like you, that for whatever reason got behind on their taxes. At some point along the way, it got too messy to handle alone. Keep in mind that every tax case is different. It has its own unique set of twists and turns. That's a given. We've included enough information to give you the background of their IRS problem so you can evaluate their situation for yourself. Does anything sound familiar from those cases? These individuals have also agreed to chat with you about our representation if you have further questions. Call 800-721-7054 and we can get that arranged. These real former clients had very good outcomes, but results may vary from case to case.
Well, after some years of contracting, I found myself in a big IRS hole, unable to pay my taxes when they came due. It was actually the biggest obstacle I found moving forward in my life, unable to sleep at night and think straight, focus on my kids and my job. I just felt like I was absolutely hopeless and there was just no way to fix this. There was no way out. I was backed into a corner and it would never resolve itself. When you get a levy notice from the IRS, they basically tell you what they're going to leave you to live on per week, which can come to just a few $100s. If you have a family and kids and responsibilities, there's just no way you can survive on $300 to $400 a week. And you realize, okay, this is real. This isn't going away. They're serious. It's time to do something. I found myself just backed into a corner and I didn't know what else to do. And I saw Travis come on the TV one day and I'm like, I'm gonna call that guy. I was a mess when this tax problem came to my plate again and I didn't know what to do. And Travis and his team just took a huge load off my shoulders. Travis is a great guy. You know, we had a good 30-minute conversation where he reassured me that this would all work itself out. I felt great after Travis was able to start working on my tax problems for me. I was able to sleep at night, start to think straight again. Before coming to Travis and his team, I owed over $27,000 to the IRS. After Travis finished my case, I settled for less than $1,000. That settlement made me feel like $1 million. I was able to get my life back on track. I was stress-free. And it showed in my relationship with my kids and my work. When you're facing an IRS issue, it does not go away. You have to be proactive and take it head on. And I would recommend Travis to everyone and anyone that has any problems with the IRS. If you find yourself in an IRS problem and you don't know what to do or who to call Travis Watkins and his team. They'll take care of you.
Well, it was about 10 years ago. I had been an attorney for about 7 or 8 years. I'd been a litigator, trial lawyer, working for big companies mostly, Walmart, Home Depot, things like that. I started taking some continuing education courses there from a CPA that was based around tax resolution law, which was kind of a bit of a departure from what I had been doing, but really worked out pretty well because it's advocacy really against the IRS as opposed to another litigant, for instance. But in the midst of all that, my mother told me that my grandfather, who I had known had ended his life over some issues. She told me that he had ended it because of a tax problem. It just kind of registered, I guess, with her that since I was doing this type of law, that it kind of all came together. And that's really when a light kind of came on with me that, hey, you know, this is for real. This touches me and my family in a unique way. It's something that has happened to us and happens to a lot of people. And in his clouded mind, I think it made sense to him at that moment that maybe he was worth more to his family, to his wife, you know, out of the picture than being in the picture and possibly having that nest egg and everything that he had worked for taken away from him. And I see things like that happen all the time as far as people being in that fear mindset, not knowing exactly what's coming down on them. and not knowing where to turn. I'm really glad that I found out kind of what this was all about and why this, what had happened to our family, because it made sense. It was something that really I felt like I had been training my whole life for in one way or another. It all culminated there when I found out that it had touched our family in that unique way.
As it relates to tax problems, my life before coming to meet with Travis was a nightmare. We had debt that was created to the IRS that we believed was inappropriate in some ways, and also inadvertent for sure. And so we struggled for years trying to pay this debt to the IRS. They continued to levy our bank accounts, put liens against our properties. And so it was a very, very difficult time for us as a family and as a business. There was a series of debts that continued to grow. So initially we owed somewhere around $600,000. By the time the IRS finished, they had increased that amount to $1.3 million. And there was no way that we were going to be able to pay that money. We thought that we might be able to reduce it in half. It ended up that for a $1.3 million debt, we paid about $8,000. We started screaming and hollering and clapping and laughing because we had spent over 3 years fighting this battle. It was great because everybody in the Travis Watkins office was so helpful and happy for us. It's like sort of like a little family, you know, and you get your family around and you're all excited because there's been a great success. God has a great plan. Scripture says that God has a plan to prosper us, not to harm us. And I know that as we prayed about this consistently, that God brought us to Travis because there was no other solution. We had already spent thousands and thousands of dollars with an attorney out of state that told us this is absolutely impossible to do what Travis did. We trusted in the Lord, we walked in faith, and He's answered our prayers.
Most people are not out there trying to pull one over on the IRS or not pay their fair share. They are people that get behind in one way or another because of something that's happened to them or their family, health situations, depressions, addictions, life, in other words, happens to them. And yes, I pivot back to that situation with my grandfather, and I say, you know, in even a small way, it's something that I can do for this person that I couldn't have done for my grandfather in his dire situation at that time.
About 10 years ago, I had a trucking company. I had about $130,000 worth of back taxes racked up. I contacted other lawyers in other states before I talked to Travis, but they just scammed me, plain and simple. Travis and his team were like I guess you could say they're like a shield. They stood in front of me and they protected me from the IRS. They were confident, so that made me feel confident. And Travis and his team got me an offer of $9,000. You can do things now that you couldn't before. I can go get a loan now. I couldn't before. I can go do all kinds of things. I can go on vacation. I can do everything now. You know what I mean? You're free again. You're free. If you're in trouble with the IRS and you're spooked and they're gonna come get your stuff, come see Travis Watkins. He'll take care of you.
I've always heard that FEAR, you know, the acronym for it is false evidence appearing real. And a lot of that is true. I mean, there's a perception in the American experience, I think, that the IRS is such a terrible agency and is so tough on people and really doesn't care about reason or logic or what happened to you. And there are plenty of horror stories out there for sure. But I also see that when people come in and even just talking to me for 10 minutes about what's been going on for the last, let's say, decade or sometimes even 2 or 3 decades, with their tax problem. I hear a lot of people when they walk out, and we haven't even really had a chance to do much yet, but just getting that off of their chest, they already start feeling better about the situation. When we can kind of break it down for what it really is, which is that the IRS big picture just wants you to pay your fair share. They want you to, they want money, in other words. And if you don't have money, then we're going to put your best foot forward there and advocate what that situation really is. And it's just taking each step, one step at a time, eating the dinosaur one bite at a time, I always say, that gets you out of that old mindset of fear and that false evidence that the world is ending, and into something that you can live with and get moving on with your life with.
My troubles with the IRS began when my marriage basically was coming to an end. Attorneys got involved, and of course when you get an attorney involved, a divorce attorney, the bills pile up really quick. So I used a lot of my 401k savings and my personal savings, and I did not pay the IRS. So about 3+ years of not paying the IRS, the debt got pretty high, well over $30,000. I left my home state of California to move back to Texas and start over, basically from ground zero. And when you want to start over hopefully with a clean slate. But I didn't have that ability. I owed the IRS $30,000 and I was accumulating. I think the IRS problem was with me almost every single day. It impacted just about everything that I did. Like most people, I jumped on Google and began to research law firms and almost gave up looking for an attorney until I actually stumbled across Travis's website. I read a lot of his testimonies, and I thought to myself, can this guy be real? And are these testimonies real? So I asked Google, does anybody have anything negative to say about Travis? I did not find one negative piece of information posted on the internet about Travis. That's when I made the decision to give him a call. Travis never asked me for money up front. He wanted to answer my questions. He wanted to tell me what he could potentially do for me. He wanted to reassure me that he could actually take my case and resolve my burden with the IRS. I had some breathing room finally, that someone was going to take over my situation. They were going to communicate to the IRS. I didn't have to answer any letters, that they would do that for me. And yes, just that in itself brought a tremendous amount of peace back to my life. I was sitting in my car at work at lunch. The phone rang, and it was one of the partners in his law firm. He said, "Hey John, guess what? I got some good news for you. We have finally received approval for your offer in compromise." I think at that split second, I was literally whooping it up in my car, just joyful, actually overly animated. I think he probably thought I was a little bit nuts, but I tell you, it was like someone had handed me a ticket to freedom. It felt so good that my debt had gone from almost $40,000 to a little over $2,000. Whether it be luck or fate, finding Travis was a godsend. The man's genuine. He's 100% true to what he says he does every single day.
The IRS, I've been dealing with them really day in and day out for over a decade. And when you're working locally, in other words, you're not working across the United States necessarily, you run across the same people at the IRS day in and day out. Over time, you build some rapport with these people. They know that I'm going to be shooting straight. I'm going to be telling the truth. I'm going to be advocating, and I know what the law is and what the rules are. It doesn't mean that we don't have to go to appeals and that we don't have to bear down on really every single case, but my experience can get you some strategic things that you can start on really the day that you come meet with me, and we can be working towards something that's going to help you out long term.
I would say that everything started about 10 years ago when my husband got behind filing federally, and it just kept catching up. He kept saying, "I'll file next year, I'll file next year." And obviously the amount that we owed continued to add up as well. So by the time everything was said and done, we filed 10 years at one time, and we owed well over $400,000 in back taxes. After we hired Travis, in the middle of all that, the May 20th tornado happened, and we were like a mile from all the devastation. Our house wasn't taken, but we had some major roof damage, stuff like that, and Daniel's youngest son was in Briarwood, one of the schools that was leveled. So it was just a lot of stress on top of stress on top of stress. And to top it all off, yes, the tornado happened. We were having major IRS issues. We were worried my husband was gonna get garnished during this period, and then I was 20 weeks pregnant at the time too, so it was a big mess. Even though I was skeptical going into the whole thing, I would say that our overall experience with the office staff and with Travis himself was great. He was very straightforward. He didn't beat around the bush. He told us, this is what you're gonna get, this is how I'm gonna do it. He was basically very point A, point B, and that's what we needed at the time, because everything else in our life seemed so just overwhelming. It was nice to just know, this is what you're gonna get, this is how much it's gonna cost, and everything he said he was gonna do, he followed through. Finally, our offer in compromise was accepted. It was the best news that we have had in a long time. I would say that Travis and the office, they far exceeded our expectations. We are so grateful for Travis and his office. He did a wonderful job and got everything done that we needed to get done. And now we feel like we can move on with our lives. We're able to sleep, we can breathe and not worry about everything that we were worried about before. It's been a total life changer for us, so we're very fortunate.
This deal with my grandfather and him passing and me finding out later in life that it was because of a tax problem. I just felt at that moment when I found out about that situation that this is what my calling really is, that it's what I was put here on this earth to do. And when I figured out what my ultimate calling was here in life, why I was put here on this earth, it all clicked, it all came together. I'd been learning under fire how to advocate, how to research, how to get to the bottom of a problem, a legal problem, and then applying that to helping those people who, like my grandfather, were in a bad place in their life, seeing them through to the other side of that. It all comes together and just really completes my life.